Hello everybody, we're going to start our webinar in a couple of minutes. Hello everybody guys, let us start our 7th day of our OroCommerce webinar, and just to remind you what we have achieved already. So in the first week, we have checked the storefront websites together with the customer entities. We have checked layout and themes, and we have also checked how products and catalog works. During the second week, we have checked the pricing engine, we have checked promotions and discount, taxes together with inventories, and finally, we have checked the sales flow, shopping list, RFQs, quotes, and orders. And today, we are going to continue our sales flow with the checkout. But before we will go to the checkout itself, I would like to remind you about the sales floors at the store about the sales floor at the storefront, and just remind you how the entities converted each other. So here is our sales flow. So as you can see here, we have multiple entities which can be converted each to other, but most of them, one way or the other, can be converted to the checkout, either from the shopping clicks directly, or from the RFQ, or from the quote, or even from the order, one way or another. If order is created from the storefront, it means that customer is buying something on the storefront, he has to start checkout, he has to complete, and only then the actual order will be created. And today we're actually going to check what is checkout, how to work with it, how to customize it, what kind of developers tricks we have related to the checkout. And I can also show you an example of simple customization of the checkout. And so let us start. So the first thing we'd like to check is basically understand what is checkout and how it's used in the application. So checkout is a process for checking out the items in the cart. And during this step, during this flow, during this process, customer has to go through the list or through the series of steps, which include billing information, where customer has to specify his billing address, shipping information, where customer has to specify his shipping address, shipping methods, where customer has to specify how he wants some products to be delivered to him, payment method, means how customer has to pay for it. And we have order review step. Basically, these 5 steps complete the standard checkout, but there may be more. And today we're going to check all these entities. Pay attention that order is the fact that checkout was started doesn't mean that the order was created. So let us return to that schema and check it again. So here we can see that checkout is a separate entity in this sales flow, and this checkout is in fact a new container which used as a temporary storage for data, which then used to create an order. So this flow, all these arrows, all these conversions are still valid, and checkout is a separate entity, and it does not mean that appropriate order has been created yet. So what is checkout in OroCommerce? So checkout in OroCommerce is technically a workflow. Yes, it's a big workflow. Yes, it has quite a lot of customization, but it's still a just workflow which contains of YAML configuration, couple of additional layouts updates, and some special actions we are going to check today. Checkout can be started from any entity, but out of the box, we have it for the shopping list, we have it for the quote, and we have it for the order. So again, let us return quickly to that schema. So here we can see that checkout can be started from the shopping list, this arrow. It can be started from quote, this arrow, or it can be started from order using the order button we have seen last week. And these are the 3 entities which can be used to start a checkout, and these are the 3 ways which can be used to start a checkout. Checkout can be either multi-page or single page. It means that either we can go through some kind of wizard where we can see all the related information, all the steps one by one, or application supports also a single page mode where all the information will run it on the same page. Depends on the situation. Both of these checkouts make sense. Depends on the customer, depends on the application, depends on the customizations. You may use any of these approaches. Checkout can be also added for the guest customers. We have such configuration in the system configuration, and guests basically means anonymous users who did not register and log into the OroCommerce. And information, all the logic about the checkout bundle is stored into the in the Oro checkout bundle. Pay attention that this is not the only bundle which contains checkout, and we are going to see other bundles in scope of this topic too. So let us start from the standard checkouts we have out of the box, and we have three. So the first one is a standard checkout, which consists of only 5 steps. Then we have an alternative checkout, which represents an example of the checkout workflow customization. Pay attention, it's not a real checkout. You may use it as an example, but it's not the real thing. And this alternative checkout also requests and order approval. And finally, we have single page checkout. This is an example of how we can show all the information on the same page there. Let us go and quickly check these checkouts and see what information we have there and how it's organized. So first, because the work checkout is the workflow, we have to go to the storefront, to the management console, and see what workflows we have associated with this checkout entity. So checkout is just an entity like order, like shopping list. So it's a container of line items. And in case of the checkout, we have special workflows associated with this entity. And so here we can see these three flows. We can see alternative checkout, we can see standard checkout, and we can see single page checkout. Let me deactivate all the checkouts except for the standard one. Yes, please. So now we have only one active standard checkout, and let us go to the storefront and see how it works and what we have there. I need a customer user for that, because I have to be logged in by default. Guest checkout is disabled. So in order to start checkout, we have to use one of the entities. So let's use a shopping list as the first example, and we all have already seen that it can be started from other entities. So shopping list is the simplest approach, and let's use it here. So here we have a shopping list with one product, and this product we are going to use during our training to demonstrate how checkout works. So in order to start checkout, user has to click button create order either here or here, no difference. It's doing absolutely the same thing. And after that, application is going to create checkout entity and start checkout workflow, the only active one, the standard checkout flow, using this entity. So this is a workflow page, and in fact, when we are going through the steps of this checkout, the URL will not change. It will be the same. So the only thing which is changing is a workflow step, and we are going to check it right now. But first, if you want to have a list of all the checkouts, you may find it in the account section under the orders. So here we have order history. We have all open orders and we have all past orders. And all open orders are in fact our checkouts. So we have just started a checkout, and in fact we can see that we have just done that. It's 4 a.m. in Poland right now, so as you can see it was created at 4 a.m. We have the owner of this checkout, because if you have proper permission, you may see checkout started by not only your customer users, but also from the customer users from your child customers. We see the step, which is billing information here. And what we can do here, we can either continue checkout. So checkout will simply lead us to the checkout page, or we can delete it. So let's delete the other one, checkout. And application simply remove checkout entity together with the associated workflow item. Let us continue the checkout and let us see what is going on. So the first step. The first step is the billing address selection, and on billing address selection, customer can specify the billing address he wants to use in this order. So we have two address books here, global address book, which is a customer address book, and my address book, which is a customer user address book. So we can pick one of these addresses, but we also can create a new address. Here you can see the form where a customer may create his own address. You can either save it or keep it unsaved, depends on the situation. And you may also specify this address as a shipping address too. So just to remind you, when we're working with the customer and customer users, addresses of all the customer and customer users can be either billing or shipping, or they can be even both billing and shipping simultaneously. So by doing that, by clicking ship to this address, application is going to use this address as a shipping address in shipping information step, and then skip the second step and go direct to the third step of the shipping method. So let us try to do it without it first. So here we see the shipping information step, and we can also specify address or pick existing address or specify a new address. We can also refer to the billing address if we want to. In this case, this field will be disabled. And we can also see that required address has been selected here on the left side. So this is like additional information we can see in order to see what was selected on the previous steps. So if you want to go through if you want to change some information and you want to return to the previous step, you can always click on the edit button here. So you can see this pen icon. By clicking on it, workflow is forwarded to the required step, or in this case on the first step, so almost a restart. And here you can specify a different value. And now let us try to pick this ship to this address option. And as you can see, application set the same address both as billing and the shipping, and forwarded us to the third step called shipping method. On the shipping method, customer has to specify how exactly his order will be shipped. We have here several methods. We're going to see in details the shipping methods tomorrow, but for now you can just remember that we can select one of the existing shipping methods. And in order to complete a checkout, there must be at least one. Otherwise, customer simply will not be able to start a checkout. Very similar situation we have with the payment methods. This is a place where a customer has to specify how he wants to pay for the order. And again, we're going to check it in details tomorrow. But for now, please remember that the customer has to select it here. Same situation, there must be at least one payment method in order to start and complete the checkout. And finally, we have order review step. So this is a final step where we can put additional information required for the administrator to process the order. So first of all, here we have the order information. We have item, we have SKU, we have quantity, we have price, we have subtotal. And it will not be changed in this moment because we have already saved it in the checkout entity. We have some other options, why other options include not ship later than, PO number. So just to remind you, PO number is the transparent identifier of all the entities in the sales flow. And then we have notes where we can just remain some kind of useful command for the customer. Here we also have a checkbox which allows us to automatically remove the shopping lists after the order submission. So let me click it, unclick it, let me not click it yet. And here you can also specify a coupon code if you're using the discounts, but we have checked this one already during the promotion topic. Pay attention that at this moment, you can still modify the content of your order. You can still modify the list of the items. Here we have an edit button. Here you can see it. Again, it's blue pen. We can click it and the user will be immediately redirected to the appropriate entity, which is in our case, the shopping list. So let us add some other products to the shopping list and try to continue the checkout. Yeah. Here are the shopping list I was originally using. So here we can see it. Now we have 2 line items, not one. And if I will click create order, pay attention that we are not starting checkout from scratch. We are starting it exactly from the same step we have left it. However, if some conditions does not match, or for example, if you have some special conditions for the payment and shipping methods which cannot be satisfied for this set of products, you will be redirected to the appropriate step, and there you have to select new shipping method or new payment method. You may always click back button, so it means it's like clicking on one of these edit buttons, so you can go through the steps again in any order you like. So I have just moved to the fourth and to the third step and then returned again to the fifth step. And finally, there is a submit order button, which will be used to create an actual order. But before we'll click it, let's check again on the order profile page, and let's check again a list of the checkouts. Order history. Here we have our checkout. It's currently on the order review step. We have 2 items. We can see new subtotal, and we can see that it was when it was started, and then it was updated. So last updated, it's the time when we have changed the content of the checkout. So you may use these dates if you really want to. And we also have here a columns for the selected payment method and for the selected shipping method. I want to remain my shopping list intact, and let us submit the order and see what's happening. So right now we are finally on the last step of the checkout, and currently we have only we have nothing left to do because order has been already created. So checkout entity is still existing in the database, but it's not showing on the storefront any longer. So here we see 0 open orders, means 0 accessible checkouts, but the entity still exists. And if you want to, you can always go to database and debug it there. Here you can see the link to the order which was just created. We can go and check this order. And as you can see here, we have addresses, we have shipping tracking numbers, we have order date, and so on. And talking about the addresses, all the information we have here are copied directly from the entity which were used, in our case from the checkout. And it means that if we, for example, change the address for the customer, it will not be changed here. So this is some kind of a snapshot of the data which were in the checkout when this checkout was completed. And we have done button, which simply directs us to the storefront page. So this was the first type of the checkout called the standard checkout or just checkout. Here we can see it in the workflows. Next checkout we would like to check is the alternative checkout. So alternative checkout is the second checkout which allows us to have a approval process, very simple but still. And this approval process allows some customers to perform, to submit orders only up to some threshold. And if they want to submit the order for the higher value or the greater value, in this case, approval from the administrator is required. So how does it work? First, on the storefront, we need to activate our checkout. Yes, please. So now we have alternative checkout. For this checkout, we have a specified condition that it works only for one customer. It's for wholesaler B. And here we also have a configuration for the workflow where we can set our approval threshold. So in this case, let me change this value to a dollar value. So let's say 1,000. Save it. And yeah, so here we can see our alternative checkout. Talking about the steps, alternative checkout has 2 more steps called request approval and order approval. So these are additional steps we can see in a couple of minutes used to approve or disapprove some order if the quantity, if the total exceeds the threshold we have just set to 1,000. Talking about the permissions, we need to, or the user who is going to approve the checkout has to have appropriate permission. In our case, it's administrator. But just to remind you, administrator doesn't mean anything. We need to make sure that it has appropriate capability. And capability we're talking about called approve orders that exceeds the allowable amount. So this is a place where we can tell whether some role has a permission to approve or allow some orders to be submitted or not. So administrator has this permission, while the buyer doesn't have it. So here you can see it's gray. Gray means disabled or not allowed. So in order to use this checkout, I have to pick a user from the wholesaler B. So here we have Nancy Sally, who is administrator, and here we have Marilyn Bradley, who is the user or buyer, and we are going to use this buyer to create a checkout and submit it. So first, let me log out and log in as a new customer. And I'm going to start from creating a new shopping list, which is less than the approval threshold, less than 1,000, just to show you how checkout works if approval is not needed. Again, I can start the checkout. I can go through the steps. First 4 steps are exactly the same as we have seen already. While finals, now we have the step called order review. It was the final step in the standard checkout, but here you can see we have 2 more steps, request approval and order approval. However, in this case, we do not need any approval because we have only $51, which is less than $1,000. And so we can immediately submit the order and create the actual order entity. And as you can see in this case, it works exactly as the standard checkout. However, if I'm going to order more than $1,000, or the product that costs more than $1,000, let me order, let's say, 10 of these, 10 of these, and let's say 10 of these. Okay, so we need a little bit more. Okay, so now we more than $1,000, which is great. And let us start this checkout. So here we are going to do exactly the same thing. Shipping method, payment method. However, pay attention that the transition, the button which was here called submit order now is changed to the request approval because this customer does not have an appropriate permission to submit such big orders, and he has to, and this order requires approval from the administrator. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to click request approval, specify here some kind of note, and request actual approval. Here we can actually see the explanation why the approval is required. And as you can see, the submit button order is disabled, so we cannot proceed unless the approval is granted by some administrator. So how to grant an approval? In order for that, appropriate customer user has to be logged in. So this was my buyer, and now I'm going to use the administrator, which is Nancy Sally. Let me log in. And now important part here that as administrator, Nancy Sally can see all the orders started not only by this customer user, but by the other customer users too. And here we can see that this order was, this checkout was started by Marilyn Bradley. We can see it in the order approval step, and we see all the information here. So we can continue this checkout as a different customer user. And here you can see that we have a status called pending approval. We have a note, please approve this test order. So this is information we have left on by the previous customer user. And now we can approve the order. And after the order is approved, we have saving here the data when it was approved, and we can actually submit the order. I'm going to switch back to the first customer because he actually the person who ordered, and in most cases he can submit the order. He has to submit the order, but in general, administrator can submit this order too. Let me sign out. Let me return to the previous customer user. This one. I need order history. This is the place where we can see all the checkouts, and here we can see the our checkout. We can see the entity started from and all the information we had there before. Finally, we can submit our order. Now we can see the submit order button is active and appropriate order was approved. And now this customer can finally submit the order. And here we can see again the final step of the checkout. Thank you for your purchase. And we can have a link to this order where you can see all the information about the order: address, payment method, shipping method, list last items, subtotals, and so on. This is how an alternative checkout works in Oro. The last standard checkout Oro has out of the box called single page checkout. It's very similar to the standard checkout with one exception. All the information, all the steps are rendered on the same page. So let me activate this checkout quickly. And deactivate this one because we don't need it any longer. And so now I have only single page checkout active. We can actually check that it has only one real step, or sorry, two steps called checkout and order created, where checkout step contains all the information we need to submit the checkout. And let us try to use this checkout and submit some order. I'm going to use my umbrella again, because why not? I'm going to use even the same shopping list because I did not remove it before that. And let me create appropriate order. Now we can see a totally different page. It's a totally different view. And here we can see the same information grouped by in three sections. So here I have a billing information. And we can, of course, also specify a new address if we want to. And we have the payment method related to this billing information. Then we have the shipping information where we have shipping address together with the shipping method and shipping date. If we have it, we may use it. And then we have a list of our items together with the PO number, notes, and ability to submit a coupon code. And let us try use it and submit this order. So we have just done it. We have our new order created using the single page checkout. Here, all the information we had before. Now let us quickly check the steps and quickly check the configuration for these steps on the code level. So just to remind you, the 5 default steps we have in all checkouts, one way or another, it's a billing information, shipping method, payment, order review, and order created. And these 5 steps represent the information required to submit and create the order using the standard checkouts. Billing information, the shipping billing address, shipping information, shipping address, shipping method, well, shipping method, payment is a payment method, order review, all the additional information which may be needed to submit the checkout, usually optional, and order created is the step where we are informing the customer that the appropriate order has been created. Let us check the configuration now. So I'm going to show you the configuration of the steps right now for this specific checkout. I'm going to use the standard checkout here. And here are our steps. So the first one is the enter credential step. This is a place with a special step which can be used if we are allowing guest checkout. So this is a place where a user can enter his login and password. Another special step to submit or to the agree with the, some special consents like GDPR. So it's a place where you can also add the step which you can also use in your checkout. And then we go through our steps. The first one called enter billing address. Then we have enter shipping address, enter shipping method, enter payment, order review, and order created. Pay attention that the lower the steps, the more transitions we have. It's because we have a special transition for each edit click for each step. So we can, let's say, from the order review step, we can return to the enter credentials, enter customer consent, billing address, shipping address, and so on. But we also have some special transitions like payment error, which is happening when user specifies invalid payment data. Finish checkout, which is correct transition. Verify payment, self-transition used in order to complete the checkout and make sure that everything is right. Verify customer concerns. I think this one is clear. And place order is the final transition to the order created step. And here you can see other transitions too. And because we have customer consents here, each transition has a transition, each step has transition called verify customer consents used to make sure that the customer consents are valid and were approved or agreed with by our customer user. Now let's go and see the configuration for each of the steps, each of the transitions one by one. So we're going to start from start and we're going to check our start transitions. Start transitions, so let me remind you, is the special way to start our checkout. And just to remind you, we have several ways to do it. So first we have our special name of transition, underscore start underscore, which is the system transition, which each workflow always has. And in fact, as you can see, all the start, not all, at least two of the start transitions, in fact, use the same definition called start definition, because they're doing exactly the same thing. We have other start transitions though, which have their own definitions, but still in the very end, they will also trigger the same start transition. But let's start from the definition of the transitions here. So it's marked as start true, special option, it's an variable if hidden, it's true. Addition definition, which defines what things we're going to do in scope of this transition, and a special front-end options defined the logic on the shopping list page. Here we have component name, we have component module, and we have component options. This thing is needed for the JavaScript on the shopping list page to start the checkout. Here we can see the route itself. So this is the route of the shopping list, which tell us what we can use it for. For example, if we want to edit the checkout, we have the entity, and we are checking that appropriate customer has a permission called checkout create for the entity shopping list. So this is a special permission. You can either grant or revoke it, and by doing that, you may allow or disallow starting checkout from the shopping list. And we have a transition called start from quick order form. So this is the way to start checkout from the quick order form directly without a new entity. And here we have also start from quick order definition, again with JS component options here. We have routes which can be used for that. So we can either start directly or from the copy paste or from the import. And here we're checking whether the appropriate customer has permission to create a checkout entity just to make sure that everything is okay. Then we have a special action group in actions actually responsible for the starting our checkout. It's called start checkout. And as you can see it here, this is the data. So data in our case is the source criteria. And result of this start checkout action is the actual checkout entity, list of errors if we cannot do that, and the direct URL to the page that we have to show the customer. So this one is I'm here demonstrating you from the demonstrating you definition of the checkout front-end start from order. But if you can check it, you may see that this action group is run, in fact, in every start transition. Let us check this action group quickly. I need checkout bundle. And here, is it? Yeah, it is. So here is the action group called start checkout. We see the parameters, and there we can see special action group called find checkout, which in fact finds or creates checkout. Let's check it quickly too. So here we are trying to find the appropriate entity for the checkout. We are trying to get active user for the checkout. Here we are trying to find appropriate checkout if it was already started before, and if it does not, we can create a checkout. So this is a place where we're creating the checkout source and the checkout entity. So just to remind you, checkout source is entity which stores reference to the entity which was used to start the checkout. So either shopping list or the quote or the order. And then we are creating the entities either for regular customer or for the guest customer. Let me return quickly to the create checkout. So here we have start checkout. We have run action group called find checkout, which returned us the checkout entity itself. And then we have actual group called prepare checkout settings, which fills source entity, or in our case, the checkout with some kind of settings. Here we are updating workflow item. In our case, it just validates the status of it and fills data. And finally, we are redirecting customer to the checkout page, which is represented by the route or checkout front-end checkout with parameter ID of the checkout. Pay attention that here we have extendable condition, which you may use to not allow it and not allow to start checkout if you want to. So you may listen to this event, add a listener to it, and add some errors if you want to. So now we're going to check list of the transitions. So transition here is transitions here represents transition between the checkout steps. So like, for example, go to the billing information step, go to the shipping information step, and so on. And here you can see all the transitions and definition for the transitions, which in fact defines what exactly is going to be done here. So it's not a lot, at least at the first steps. So here almost all the actions with the data have an action called generate checkout state snapshot. So this is a snapshot of the data used to compare data. For example, when we are changing the list of items, here application is going to verify it, make see that snapshot is different, and recalculate the state. And this is basically how it's done. So this is the checkout state. Here we are checking the state, we are calculating if it's needed, and snapshot and save. And we may also save exhibit consents if it was needed. So here we have transition for the verification of customer consents, continue to the shipping address definition. It's actually a bit longer in this case because we need to modify, need to check the source entity, we need to check whether we are running as a regular customer or a guest customer. Define snapshot, continue to the shipping method. Again, very similar action here. Continue to the payment definition. Again, not a lot of things done here. Continue to the order review. So here we are saving our payment information. We're going to check all these items in scope of the payment and shipping methods tomorrow. And finally, we have place order definition, which is responsible for creating the order, or creating the entity which represents the order. Here we have preconditions, here we have conditions, here we have actions. And here we have B2B flow checkout purchase action group, which is in fact doing what we need to do. Let us check this group quickly. So here it is. So here we're generating the success URL, payment URL, payment errors URL in case if we need to generate customer, and we are doing the purchase. So it's a place where actual payment is happening. And then if everything is all right, we're checking basically it's all right or not. And if it's not all right, we're directing to the transition called payment error. Otherwise, we are continuing the checkout. And by doing that, we're actually completing it and finishing it. And finish checkout is a very small transition, which is used to show customer that order is ready page. And here we can see handle registration and finish checkout, where we can do some kind of post actions or final actions in order to complete the checkout and finish order submission process. So we may also check it quickly. So here we are saving billing and shipping addresses if it's needed. Sending confirmation email. Here we are checking our order entity, filling it with the source entity. And finally, we are removing checkout source entity if it's needed. So remember that checkbox on the last step of checkout. So this is where actual magic is happening. We have to remove checkout source entity action responsible for removing of that entity. There is also a special class called checkout controller, which is just standard Symfony controller, which is used to process the workflow actions. So unlike the standard workflows, and just to remind you, all the workflow using the same controller to process the transitions, checkout has its own controller because it has a special logic assigned to it. So first, its ability to the restart. So you can completely restart checkout from scratch without saving the data. So you can do it. It also has a special way to process transitions. You'll see it a little bit later. Checkout controller also can collect and render appropriate warnings and error messages as standard form errors. And there may be also special flash messages added via the checkout workflow. Checkout controller is a good place to start debugging. It's a good place to customize the workflow on the low level, and it's a great place if you want to understand how checkout is starting from any place. So let us check it and let us see how it works. So the checkout controller is stored in the checkout bundle. Here it is. And this is our checkout action. So the first thing you have probably mentioned is that we have disabled garbage collector, and we have done to the improve performance because checkout is quite a complicated process and we would like to make it as fast as possible. Then we are getting our checkout entity. So just to remind you, we are guaranteeing that it's here mostly because we have already created it via definition. We may check the product visibility. Then we are getting current step and the workflow item. So this is the information we need in order to process the required transition. We may also have a response data at this moment, and if everything is all right, we simply directing customer to the appropriate page with the appropriate information sent to the controller. So this is a standard layout based page. So we have layout annotation here with two context variables called workflow step name and workflow name. Couple of the interesting things which is happening here is the way we're extracting our workflow item. So here we are using the standard workflow helper to do it, and we are using that standard workflow manager to get the workflow item. And second thing is the way we are processing the transition. Give me a second. Here we have it. So this is already a new class called checkout workflow helper, where we are performing transition based on the request data and based on the checkout data. So this is a place where we are processing our workflows in the unusual way. And that's why we have a special controller. So workflow item is just to get workflow item from database. We may also stop propagation if it's needed. Here we may, here it uses standard conditions from the workflow in order to check it. It is allowed is doing that. And then if we have a post method, it means that post has been submitted, it means that some form has been submitted. We may restart workflow. So this is the flag I have mentioned here. So there is a way to restart workflow and start checkout workflow under certain circumstances. Or we can immediately process the data. And here we have registration request, a forgot password request. And finally, if everything is all right and customer indeed logged in, we can handle transition. get and post transitions have a little bit different options because get transitions does not have form, while post transition may have it and usually has it. And here we have transition of the form. This is where we are creating the form. We are submitting the form using this handle request method from Symfony. And we are checking errors and allowing or not allowing transition based on the result. So for example, here, if it's not valid, we are adding errors from the form. You can see here at flash workflow state warnings, and we are simply not allowing to go further. While if everything is all right, we are transitioning our workflow. This is how the standard checkout controller works and what is happening under the bonnet. So it put a breakpoint here, pick some shopping lists, and try to debug it. So I need to activate the Xdebug for that. Okay, done. Enable debugging on the PHP storm level, and let us try to start this checkout from the storefront. I need to add something to the order first, to the shopping list first. So here is our shopping list. And now we're going to actually start the checkout and see what will happen. And now, as you can see, PHP Storm intercepted the request from the browser, and we can debug step by step what is going on here. So first, here is our checkout entity. So you can see quite a lot of information here, like payment method, shipping method, website, list of line items, because it's a container, subtotals, coupons, conditions, organization, user, customer. So all the information you may need during the checkout is stored in the checkout entity. And we have current step. So currently we are processing this step and we are trying to understand whether we can start or cannot start the appropriate for using this entity. It takes some time, and in our case, we have our current step, and our current step is the checkout step. So it's the first one. And what we can do, we can actually proceed here and return the standard page to the storefront. And here is this page. So let me remind you, we have there the single page checkout. So that is why we're seeing this page. It will look exactly the same when we submit the order. So breakpoint is still here. Same thing. We are processing the form. We are trying to get all the data from the form. We are validating the form, checking for errors, and so on and so on. And we're still on the same step. So we're not processed yet. And now we see the response data, which means that everything is okay. And we have a direct URL, which will be used by the storefront to process it. Let's complete it. And now we have the actual redirect. So this is a place where the second transition has been performed. We will be able to see it in a moment when we can check the current step. Yeah, now we can see the step, it's not checkout, it's order created, which means that we have successfully completed the checkout. And we can simply show the customer the order has been created page. Yep, so this is how it works. Feel free to put a breakpoint to this controller anytime you like if you want to understand how it works. Or for example, if you have some kind of issue which is tricky to debug, this is a great place to start debugging from. It's a great place where you can start your debugging, understand what is going on and how it works under the bonnet. Before we'll go to the checkout UI, I would propose to make a small break, let's say 15 minutes as usual. And before doing that, let me check the Q&A sections. No questions for now? Okay, so if you have some questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A chat and I will answer them in the end of the webinar. So let us continue in 15 minutes. Okay, let us continue. And we are continuing our checkout topic. Checkout webinar. Now we're going to talk about the checkout UI. We're going to check how checkout page is built on the storefront using layout updates, how the translations are handled, and what you can customize there as a developer. So first, let's start with layout updates. As we have seen already, checkout controller uses the layout engine, and technically, every time we are on the checkout page, no matter the step, we are always using the same controller, we are always using the same page. It means that we can use the same directory, the same checkout directory, and apply their different actions. This is exactly what we're going to check now. So first, let's start from checking the controller, checking the appropriate directory in the checkout bundle. I need this controller. And here we can check the layout updates. And here is our root. So here we can see adjacent page directory, so we need the page directory, and these are layouts updates which added to the appropriate page. By default, in fact, we have all of them applied simultaneously, but because each of them has condition like workflow step name equals billing address, workflow step name equals payment, and so on, only one of them in fact applied except for the main one. So main one is applied on all the pages except for the last one, which is order created. So here we can see this information. Here you can see the options for title, option for the paid title, and so on. However, most of the information is stored inside the imports. So just to remind you, import provides you ability to embed the tree on the several times on the page or on the different pages with different roles. And here is our imports used on the checkout page. So let's start from the content. So content itself is the main block. And as you can see, it consists of quite a big tree. Here's the tree. Here we have content, we have the information, we have form, we have the fields, all the blocks here and there. So let me open application in dev mode and let me demonstrate you that. Okay, dev mode opened. I need to log in again. Let me start the checkout. Let me change the checkout and start with the standard one because this one is also a good example, but it's better to look at the standard workflow because standard checkout workflow because it has better representation there. Okay, active, create order. Oh, okay, so here we are. So let me open the checkout page layout tree. So here we can see the blocks added there, and we are mostly interested in the checkout base block, starting from the checkout content. So checkout content is the main block for the checkout. There we have checkout information, which contains of head title. Then we have checkout information body with the form. So form like selection of the shipping address, like setting the appropriate billing code and so on. Then we have order summary container. We have all the information about the container. Then we have content of the summary and the notes. So these are the main blocks we have on the same page. Now let's see how they're added via the code and see what imports are used there. So this was the main content, which we have seen already. Then we have a special import for the checkout grid. So this is an import where we are adding grid to the order page. Then we have sidebar. So sidebar is the left part of the checkout. This is a place where we're adding sidebar. So these are our checkout steps on the left side. So let me just show you again and show you this sidebar. So this is a sidebar, billing information, shipping method, and so on. These are layout updates responsible for adding these blocks there. Here we have layout update for the single page we have seen previously, but it's basically just a combination of all the updates from the standard checkout. Customer menu update and payment method auto submit if we need this one. This is a special checkout used only in the payment methods. So the main information is stored in the sidebar page, which is responsible for rendering the left part with list of a step and the checkout content, where we can see all the information, all the structure of blocks which are rendered there. You may just go here and check them one by one, understand how it's working. Here is the templates for these blocks. Again, they are not very complicated, mostly the standard HTML text with styles on top of it. So here, for example, we have rendering of a grid with the line items, and for each line item, we're rendering an appropriate block, and so on and so on. Here, for example, we have a billing information YAML file responsible for adding billing information there. So here we have the standard billing information template. We're going to check it a little bit later. Checkout button continue. This is the continue button. We have to tell application either it's allowed or not. And here we're checking it that it's allowed only for the not logged in customer or with the registered customer, or we have a feature enabled allow checkout without email confirmation. We're checking the back button. Again, in this case, we need to make sure the consents are available here. And finally, we are adding here a special block transition, checkout transition continue, where we are passing our information about the workflow. And pay attention, this layout update is added only if we have current step equals the enter billing address. This information is coming from the controller as a context variable defined in the layout annotation. Let me remind you. So here is our controller. Here is workflow step name. And this is a definition for the workflow step name defined in layout annotation. And here are the templates. In our case, I think it's only one block. Yeah, it's only one block for the form fields because it's simple enough. We don't need to have anything there. But the block itself is quite big because there we have different ways how addresses can be represented. So here we are getting our billing address from the checkout. So checkout entity is passed to this block. And we're checking whether we're allowing or disallowing adding of billing addresses. If it's not allowed, if it's disallowed, so it's not allowed, yeah, we are rendering on the standard addresses, but if it's allowed, we also allowing to add new form, and in this case, we can select from the checkbox, we can select from the drop-down, or we can create a new address using this new address option here. Talking about the transitions, we have already seen this quick. Talking about translations. Translations in checkout, as you have already checked it with during the workflow topic, translations are stored in the separate file called workflows and YAML. So here we have added a separate symphony translation domain called workflows, and there we are storing checkout translations in the special format, which here we have or a workflow, and we have the workflow name. And then we have several sections. So first, the label itself, it's a label of the checkout, which can be used on the storefront or back office. Step and list of and name of the step dot label. This is the labels for the required steps. Attribute, same thing for the attribute. Name of the attribute dot label. Transition, same thing here. Transition name dot label, but here we also have button labels. We may have button warning message and some other options, like here, for example. And that's it. So here we have information for all our transitions in the checkout. This one is this for standard checkout, B2B flow checkout. Then we have the same translations for the single page checkout. And alternative checkout has its own bundle which has the same file. Couple of words about the recommended way to customize the checkout. So the very first thing you should do, you have to copy definition of the checkout, one of the standard ones, either the standard or the alternative or the single page checkout, and then customize a copy of it. Why so? Mostly because, mostly to maintain backward compatibility. So let's assume that you are upgrading from one patch version to another patch version, and there were minor changes which may affect the standard checkout. Or team testing all the change using the backward compatibility logic and backward compatibility tests in order to guarantee that application does not work, but it cannot guarantee that it will work with your customization on the top of it. So customization done in the layout update file may break the logic. That is why we're recommending the copy the whole checkout and use it all together as a snapshot of the original checkout and then customization on top of it. Yes, you may reuse the attributes, steps, transitions, and all the parts of the workflow there, no problems, but in this case, you have to make sure that your checkout is fully functional after each upgrade to the patch or minor version. Then you have to actually customize the checkout, remove attributes, step, transition definitions. You may add new variables, you may add new ACL conditions, you may add any business logic you like in order to satisfy your requirements and satisfy a customer. You should, in most cases of the cases, customize layout updates to make it look a little bit different, like add new styling, maybe move table to on the top or the bottom, perhaps change some styling, add some icons and so on. And finally, if you need a really deep customization, you have to customize the controller. Customization of controller is done using the standard Symfony logic. So you simply have to create a controller with the same root name. So let me remind you, here is our checkout controller. Here is the root name or checkout frontend checkout. So you may simply register your bundle after the standard checkout bundle, create a route with the same name, copy or extend this controller, and use it instead of the standard one. By doing that, you may put your custom logic here, and by doing that, you may also put some additional features to the checkout. Of course, all standard Symfony best practices will also work here. So you may listen to the kernel events, you may intercept the response and modify it if you really want to. List of best practices for the checkout. So it's an important one because checkout is one of the key features on the OroCommerce storefront, and you have to be sure that it's working properly there. So first, make sure that you implement all the standard or positive scenarios which customer has to follow, and make sure that the customer understand how to do that. Because sometimes if you will put like very small button or convert button to a link, it may not be clear that customer has to click that button or that link in order to continue the checkout. Then you have to implement and test all non-standard or negative scenarios. It's the places where a customer specifies wrong data during the payment method, where the customer forgets to fill some required field during the address on one of the address steps, and so on. If you need some configuration on it for your checkout, you have two options. So first, you may use standard system configuration, which is fine. But in this case, all these options will be shared between different checkouts if you want to. And the second one, you may implement workflow variables, as we have seen in the alternative checkout, where you can specify variables specific for the actual checkout, specific for each checkout you have in your applications. If you have a lot of complicated logic, which is a common thing when we are working with the checkout, feel free to pack them into the single condition or single action and use them during the checkout. As you remember, we have seen quite a lot of different action group and custom conditions. We in Oro doing the same thing. We're packing all the logic in the same action. If it's easier to process, we just are maintaining the proper interface and guaranteeing that it will not be changed later. If you need some additional informational fields, let's say you want to know whether you need special packing or maybe you need some kind of finishing, you may put this information to the order review step. There we have great examples of fields there, like for example, notes, like not ship later than, and so on. And there you may add your custom additional informational fields too. Talking about the conversion from one entity to another entity. So you have already seen that we can start checkout from 3 different entities. We can start from the shopping list, we can start from the quote, we can start from the order. And in order to convert one entity to another entity, there is a special line item converter interface, which has 3 implementations. Let us see this interface and let us see the implementations. So as you can see, interface is very simple. It's simply telling the application whether appropriate source an entity here is supported and actually converting them to the collection of checkout line items. So as you can see, we have 3 implementations for the order line item, for the shopping list line item, and for the quote demand line item, which is for the quote. And there we are iterating over line items and creating a proper checkout line item. This is one of the common extension points which used by a developer if they want to customize checkout before checkout entity before the checkout workflow is started. So this code this code is called every time customer start checkout, and if you need some logic which is not part of the checkout workflow too, you may put it here, like by creating the decorator and adding your information to the required line items. Developer may also want or need to add a new entity start checkout from, for example, invoice. In this case, developer has to add a new relation to Oro checkout source table or checkout source entity if we're talking about doctrine entity, implement checkout line item converter interface, which we have seen already, in order to convert required line items from the new custom entity, let's say invoice, to the checkout line items, and maybe add start checkout workflow transition, just to make sure that our application is able to start the checkout and know where the data is coming from. Talking about the quality assurance, you have to check that all possible ways to start the checkout. So we have 3, but you may have more. You have to check scenarios with the real data, or at least with the same amount of data. So let's say you're working with a B2B application, customers may submit hundreds or maybe even thousands of items. So make sure that your checkout can handle this amount in a reasonable amount of time. And you also have to check and test all the negative scenarios where a customer fills invalid data, where a customer forgets to put some values here and there, to make sure that your checkout is always works fine. Couple of useful tips and tricks. So let us check the system configuration and see what things we can do there too. So here we see separate options related to the checkout. So we may allow registration during checkout, or we may allow checkout without email confirmation. And we may also allow guest checkout. It means that customer may start checkout as a guest customer user, and everything. And this customer does not need to does not need to have a real customer user or approved customer user in order to work with it. Talking about the workflows, you may have several checkout workflows active or enabled simultaneously. For example, you may have 3 or 5 websites, and each of the websites may have its own workflow. The default way to implement that using the scopes. So scope is one of the section of the checkout, one of the section of the workflow definition, and alternative checkout bundle in fact uses this approach in the alternative checkout. Let me show you that. So here we have a scope for the customer. So customer number 4 is just a hard-coded ID of the customer or seller B. You may put it like that, or you may dynamically mix this information to the checkout configuration and add a here workflow ID, add here website ID, which represents the appropriate website where you want to use the checkout. And by the way, talking about the alternative checkout bundle, so this is a very good example of how customization of the checkout should be done. So here we can see an exact copy of the standard workflow together with the new steps, together with the new condition, together with the new permissions. So you can see all this information here. You can see some kind of additional business logic. Here you may see layout updates. It's not a lot, but still some modifications, like for adding approve request or request approval steps, and also minor modifications here too. Some modifications for the templates, and not a lot, but still. And here we have a translation for this alternative checkout. This file I have measured, and now here you can see how it's organized here. By the way, here we can see one more section called variable for the workflow variables, because there we have order approval threshold variable, which allows us to approve orders above this threshold. Migrations, not a lot is going on here, so just a simple example. And that's it. So this is a great bundle which you can use as a template for the custom checkout, or if you want to customize existing checkout, feel free to have a look at it and use it there. Also, you should know that by default, we have several permissions in the checkout bundle related to the checkout itself. We may check it on the customer user role page in the checkout section. So here are these options. We have seen this one already. This one is added by the alternative checkout bundle, but that we have multiple options related to the addresses. So because OroCommerce is implemented to work mostly on the B2B market, we may allow or not allow enter billing and shipping addresses. We may disallow it mostly because they will be they have to be forced by the contract signed between the buyer and the seller. In this case, they cannot be changed. So by doing that, we are not allowing to enter billing address or shipping address manually. We may also allow or disallow use either the customer addresses or customer user addresses. So here we can see appropriate options here. So this one is for the customer user address book, use billing address from customer address book, and use shipping address from customer address book, and same thing for the customer user address book. And we may also allow or disallow using the default billing address here for the billing and here for the shipping. So if you need some kind of different logic or different permissions for your custom checkout, feel free to add new capability to the checkout section and grant or revoke permission for the required customer user roles. Again, alternative checkout bundle has a great example. Here we have that alternative checkout bundle security permission checkout approve added to the checkout category or checkout section. And this capability represents this option, this permission, approve orders that exceeds the allowable amount. And then later you may check the code, of course, and see where this ACL is used. So here you may see that the application uses special condition called ACL granted to make sure that appropriate buttons or appropriate messages are visible to the customer which has or does not have this permission. And I think that's all for the checkout. If you have some questions, feel free to post them in chat. I will be happy to answer them. Okay, we have first question. If we have different checkout workflows on different sites, it's possible to have different LPS and PSPs. What is LPS and what is PSP? I'm not aware of this abbreviation. Perhaps I'm just not using them too often. PSP. Could you please put definition? Logistics service provider or payment provider. Yes, you can. We can do it using the shipping method and payment method, and we in fact have this option there. And tomorrow, when we are going to check when we're going to check payment methods and shipping methods, we are going to see it. So in fact, you can do it not only for the website. If you're using the condition, you can do it for a specific customer group, or for example, only for specific customers, and so on. But yeah, in general, you may distinguish them there too. Okay, no more questions there. In this case, thank you very much. Let me remind you that tomorrow we will check payment method and shipping method topics. In scope of these topics, we are going to see in details that two steps on the checkout called shipping information and payment. We're going to check how to add their new options. We are going to see what kind of standard providers, standard integrations Oro has out of the box, and how to add your own integration and customize it based on your requirements. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow.